All right, we will start now. Welcome everyone to the webinar series Goose Biology and Ecosystem Essential Ocean Variables. Today, we will be learning about the benthic invertebrates abundance and distribution and the sea turtles abundance and distribution essential ocean variables. This is a series that is a collaboration between the Global Ocean Observing System, GOOS, the Marine Biodiversity Observation Network, MBON, the Air Center's Networking Fridays, and the European Union project BioEcoOcean. My name is Ana Lara Lopez. I am the GOOS BioEco Panel International Project Officer. I am based in Hobart, Australia, and I will be your moderator. Our speakers today for the benthic invertebrates are Dr. Rachel Przylewski, who is a benthic ecologist with research interest in spatiotemporal biodiversity patterns, resource management, and impacts of anthropogenic stresses. She currently leads Research Connect Blue, a marine science consultancy, and she is also an associate professor at the University of Tasmania. Her significant achievements include characterizing the environment of several deep-sea marine parks, leading several reviews on topical marine issues to inform state government, assessing the potential impacts of a marine seismic survey on fish and scallops, and developing a suite of national marine sampling standards to which over 228 individuals from 76 agencies contributed. Dr. Henry Rule is a scientist studying ocean biogeochemistry and ecosystems. He is the Central and Northern California Ocean Observing System Director, CENCUS, which is housed at the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute in Barrie. CENCUS is part of the Integrated Ocean Observing System, IOS, which is from the US and forms part of the Global Ocean Observing System. It's one of the global regional alliances. He has worked since 1994 to understand benthic ecosystems and their functions in habitat ranging from the Potomac River and Florida Everglades to the California Current ecosystem and the abyssal plains of the deep Atlantic and Pacific. This work includes participation in the Marine Biodiversity Observation Networks, the Deep Ocean Observing Strategy, the Monterey National Marine Sanctuary, Research Activities Panel, and Synchro, a tech testbed to accelerate access to promising ocean observing technology. Now, from the GOOS Sea Turtles team, we have Dr. Eduardo Amir Cuevas, who is a marine biologist and ecologist. He has led the elaboration of national recovery plans for sea turtles in Mexico and worked on the technical justification of the decrees for marine protected areas. For more than 20 years, he has worked on conserving, managing, and restoring marine endangered species and their habitats. Nowadays, he works on the development of the research line on operational ecology at the Universidad Autónoma de Baja California, Mexico, working on the linkages between multi-sectoral needs on ocean monitoring and assessment, focus on essential environmental variables for marine megabiodiversity and seascapes. He is a member of the Marine Turtle Specialist Group, which is part of the IUCN. And finally, we have Dr. Shaleila Keles, who is a Peruvian biologist with expertise in the ecology and conservation biology of sea turtles and sharks. She holds a PhD in marine biology and conservation from Duke University in the US, thanks to a Fulbright and OAS scholarship. She is currently an associated researcher at the EC Oceanica and a consultant at the Ministry of the Environment in Peru. Her research is mainly on the conservation status of endangered marine species and looking for ways to reduce their threats. She has extensive experience in fisheries, bycatch, and sea turtle nesting. In 2018, she won the Peruvian Carlos Ponce de Prado Award in the category of Conservation Artificer. Currently, she is the co-chair of the East Pacific region of the IUCN Marine Turtle Specialist Group. So thank you all our speakers. And before I give the floor to them, I want to start this webinar with a little introduction on the essential ocean variables for biology and ecosystem. So let's start. So ocean observations are very important in order to observe and manage our ocean. They also provide us a means to have several different services or uses for use for many purposes, including developing a sustainable blue economy, looking at how the ocean health is going, carbon strategies to take climate action, community adaptation. But not one country can observe the ocean on its own. It is a very vast ecosystem. So we need to collaborate and coordinate how we do it. So normally all the ocean observations are done at a national level, but we have had a very fragmented approach for collecting observations. We have followed very diverse data and metadata standards. We have poor access to ocean biodiversity data, and we have significant gaps in observation. So that has made it really difficult to harmonize and compare data and truly make global assessments of how our ocean is going. There is also insufficient information to assess the status of and health of the ocean and its resources, as well as unequal access to ocean monitoring capacity and capability and information. So GOOS has developed this framework for coordination, which is the Essential Ocean Variable framework. And through this framework, what we're trying to do is coordinate how ocean observations are collected and how the data is managed, so we can compare and we can harmonize the data. So whatever data is collected in one region, you can put it together with different regions and then have that true assessment. The GOOS EOVs are in the three main disciplines, which is in physics, biogeochemistry, and biology and ecosystems. And here in this webinar, we're going to be focusing only on the BioEco EOVs. And we've been having a series of EOV webinars. So if everyone is interested in looking at other EOVs, they are either recorded already in our YouTube channel, or they will happen later on. So we will have the marine mammals and seabirds soon. And then there will be the fish and ocean sound, as well as mangroves and corals. So those are the ones that will happen in the future. The others have happened, and you can access their recordings. So through these BioEco EOVs, we're trying is a minimum set of ocean variables for biology and ecosystem, which will help us understand and forecast marine life. And in here, we're going to listen to the benthic invertebrates and the sea turtle EOVs. So what you have in here is the ocean observing value chain. So we start with requirements. There are different drivers to collect information. And those drivers can be at a national, at a regional, or an international level. That will trigger the monitoring and the observations. So what GOOS, together with MBON, who are collaborating, they do it trying to coordinate the observing communities and making sure that the data is managed as fair and it's open. And we use and have collaboration with OBIS, which is the Ocean Biodiversity Information System, as well as ODIS, to manage and handle that data. Of course, this data also goes to other national centers. The idea is that these data repositories are interoperable and can talk to each other, so we can then have access to that information. And with the EOVs, then you can utilize those to create either essential biodiversity variables or other models and products, and use that data to create applications and make that information accessible for later use. And at the top, you will see that those are some of the international agreements in which that information can be utilized when it is comparable, like IPBES assessments, or helping some of the member states report against the targets of multilateral agreements, such as the Global Biodiversity Framework from the CBD, or the biodiversity beyond national jurisdiction. So with that, it's just a very rough introduction of BioEco EOVs and what we're trying to do with them, which is coordinate. And I will be handing now the floor to our benthic invertebrates, who will be speaking first, and then it will be turtles. And so there is a question and answers box, hopefully. So if you have any questions, please make sure you add them there. At the end of the talks, then we will be answering and responding to those questions. So the floor is yours, Rachel and Henry.
Thanks, Anna. I'm going to go first and then Henry. Next slide. So just to give you a bit of an outline of what we'll discuss over the next 15 minutes for the benthic invert part, I'm going to briefly talk about how best practices fit into these specification sheets for the EOVs. And then we'll talk about the benthic inverts and what the scope of that is, and a very, very broad brush of the specification sheets. We'll talk about some of the challenges unique to this EOV. And then Henry's going to take over and he's going to give us some good examples of the opportunities of long-term benthic invertebrate data sets and talk about some of the future steps in this process. So hopefully by the end of it, you'll have a really good idea of where we're at with the benthic invert spec sheets and some of the challenges and use cases we've got. Next slide. So it might not be intuitive how best practices fit into this, but at the end of the day, these EOVs and specification sheets can be viewed as ocean best practices. So we're putting forward a method and a way for people to measure and monitor. And so I wanted to just kind of back up a little bit and talk about best practices in general for this EOV process, in that they can often be a little bit ill-defined. People use this word a lot, and I have plotted that out here so you can see how the terminology has increased in usage in the literature over the last few years. But again, it's often ill-defined. You know, just because you say it's a best practice doesn't necessarily mean it is. There is some efforts to define what a best practice is, and you can see Jay Perlman and a whole bunch of other co-authors, we've gotten together and given this definition, which seems to be widely cited, but even this still has some fairly vague and ill-defined words in it. I've underlined those, things like repeatedly, well, how many times? Superior results, what is superior? Multiple organizations, how many are adopting it? So there's still some challenges with it. And because of that, we developed a couple frameworks to help make things a little more quantitative as to when something should be called a best practice. Next slide, Anna. And there's two that I just wanted to briefly go through. There's this maturity scale, 1 through 5, which talks about your method or your practice in the scale of different criterion that you can tick off on. It is very difficult to get a full level 5 because that involves community review, uptake, revisions and iterations of that, measures of impact, and an international endorsement process. So a full level 5 is actually quite difficult, but generally level 4 and 5 are something that you would consider a best practice. And then we've got the steps to actually how you would develop a true best practice. And the one I really wanted to accentuate on the bottom there is you've got this third step, revise and ratify. And that often involves a very extensive community review process. And that's what we're doing with these specification sheets, these EOV specification sheets. We're not just developing them ourselves or with a small working group. We're actually trying to expand out and get input. So some of you might have gotten a questionnaire about these specification sheets. We're doing these webinars. We've also got an open door policy. So if you do look at any of these and you have some input, please get in touch with the email Anna will probably put up at the end or send out afterwards, and we'll gladly take your community review on board. Next slide. So benthic inverts, we had to define it. So obviously we could do the specification sheet, and that is, the definition is basically in fauna, the stuff on top, and the stuff in the immediate hyperbenthos. And what we have excluded from the benthic invert EOV are those things listed on the bottom. So coral, seagrass, macroalgae, phytoplankton, zooplankton, and microbes. The reason those are excluded from our EOV is because they are covered elsewhere. That's the only reason. Next slide. So the specification sheet itself has a lot of things in it, but I wanted to highlight 3 very quickly, and you'll probably see these in the sea turtle segment as well. So each specification sheet has roughly 4 subvariables. So these are the things you're actually measuring for the EOV. They're the data you're collecting. They're the actual metrics. Then you have supporting variables. These are environmental or biological information that is related to the EOV and can provide context to it. And the collection of those is often hypothesis driven. And then you've got the phenomena, and these are the desired observations from your EOV. So inherently, people don't care, for example, about the number of individuals per unit area. What they might care about is what that means for community abundance, status, and trends over time. So you're taking the subvariables and you're relating it to a phenomena that's actually of interest to monitoring programs and scientific outcomes. And so for each phenomena, we've got extent, resolution, and signal described. We also describe sampling methods and best practices that are listed. Next slide. So I just want to tick very quickly through the challenges with benthic inverts. I mean, Henry and I are a bit biased, but we do feel that this is perhaps the most challenging EOV out there. And so I'm just going to kind of put forward some reasons why. We have very varied habitats, a diverse range of habitats in this. We're talking about from the intertidal to the deep sea, and from the tropics all the way down to the poles. And so because of that, you've got all sorts of the different substrates and environments within it, and it does pose some challenges when you're trying to put a globally consistent specification forward. Next slide. We have multiple phyla in ours, excluding those ones I mentioned before. We do have, besides the microbes, potentially, we have the most phyla in all of the EOVs. And this can be difficult when you start to talk about things like functional groups and different life histories, because again, every phyla is extraordinarily diverse and different, even within and among it. Next slide. Huge range of body sizes. So Henry will talk a bit more about this with one of his case studies, but we're talking about down micrometers, nematodes, all the way up to, some of the huge tube worms that you've got at the hydrothermal vents. So that range of body sizes poses a lot of challenges when you're trying to collect data in a holistic sense. You've often got to choose one or the other, small, medium, or large. Next slide. And because of all of these reasons above, these challenges above, we have different data acquisition methods. And it's not just the data collection itself, it's often what you do with that afterwards. So marine imagery is a great example of that. You can get your images using multiple platforms, but you can also analyze those images using a whole range of different tools, many of which are rapidly advancing, some of those automated tools for annotation. And so I've just listed a few of them here. This is not by any means comprehensive or exhaustive, but it gives you an idea that, we're talking about things from doing visual census on snorkel or scuba, all the way to, some of these deep water imagery systems, and now eDNA that we've got that we're sampling near the benthos and within the sediments. At this point, I am going to pass over to Henry to give some case studies and wrap us up for the benthic inverts.
Yeah, next slide, please. Thanks, Anna and Rachel. And so, yeah, here I'll give you a couple of worked examples about the benthic invertebrate abundance and distribution data value and ways that it can work and deliver at scales relevant for the global ocean observing system, one at kind of a large regional scale and one at a global scale. And so this first example comes from the Marine Rocky Intertidal Network Marine. It has long-term stations that have been running, some of them more than 20 years, covers a really broad geographic scope for really any kind of sampling program that's been running that long along the west coast of North America there. And one of the main drivers for this program has been National Marine Sanctuary and Marine Protected Area assessment. And the methods have included photo transects and percent cover. And importantly, those have been standardized over long periods of times and over this broad sort of geographic network. And so it provides a nice example of how these benthic invertebrates can work, EOVs can work. And the program has been funded in part through the BOEM, the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, California Ocean Protection Council, and has included inputs from Pete Ramundi, Jen Cassell, and others to deliver this work. And so the next slide, please. And so the data integration has been ongoing for many years, as you might imagine, and it's now run through a hub of Data One, which is a node here in the US. It also goes through our central Northern California and Southern California Coastal Ocean Observing System portal, the California OceanObs data portal, which is pictured on the right side there. And it eventually also gets to the OBIS catalog. And importantly, this example is now also in the OBIS manual. And so the data schema and sort of how all the metadata is laid out for this data set is in the manual, and also references the NERC vocabulary server. And on the right side, you can see these polygons. The small blue and red ones are MPAs. The magenta polygon is a National Marine Sanctuary, and you can visualize the biology data there, a time series of one of the stations in Monterey in that little inset there. And so, yeah, I guess one other thing to mention is the folks who helped contribute to that data integration have included folks from our office. So Maureen Lebrecht and Julia Cherish, and also Radhi Gautam from the Marine Network itself. And so next slide. And so I think many folks will be a little bit familiar with the National Marine Sanctuary Systems. It's one of the longer running MPA networks in the world. It is a mixed use set of networks, but it runs in the US coasts and territories. And one of the important things about it is it has a sort of coherent reporting structure. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that in the next slide. And so it has this infographics and data streaming that's really meant to be public facing in the sense that it's fairly straightforward to access and understand. The graphs are fairly straightforward. And there's these infographics where you can go in and click on sea stars or other marine life, and then get time series and the graph on the right of the National Marine Sanctuary of Interest. And from that, you should be able to interpret fairly readily status and trend over time. And these infographics are, again, a nice way that the data of the benthic invertebrate abundance and distribution and various concepts can be conveyed clearly and in a sort of large national structure that also can feed into the global ocean observing system. And so next slide, please. And so the second example that I'll mention is in relation to invert biomass. And so we heard this again as one of the subvariables and phenomena to observe in terms of the change in biomass over time, change in abundance. And so in this case, we have an example where a model was used to estimate biomass change in relation to climate change. And this model uses actual in situ observations across different body sizes in order to parameterize the model. And that's how your real observations are getting used. And then their scope is expanded through the model in a global format and a gridded time variant format. And then this particular example appeared as part of an IPCC report in our governmental panel on climate change in 2022. Other examples where this data can be used is with the International Seabed Authority, GEOBON, Conventional Biological Diversity, in California with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, the Joint Nature Conservation Committee in the UK, and BOEM I mentioned already is one user of this kind of information. And so, yeah, the next slide, please. And so, yeah, this is a little bit complicated, but will be the finish of the examples here. So again, you can use a model on this top right side that is supported by, for example, a subvariable or supporting variable particulate matter or particulate organic carbon flux, which along with temperature helps set the metabolism of life on the seafloor. And this can then be used to model the seafloor biomass. And so how does one go about making that model again? Looking at the bottom, we have sediment sampling. We can have imaging now with autonomous underwater vehicles. As was mentioned, the sort of scale of this imaging is growing all the time. And so how does one use a systems approach to create a data lifecycle where this information can feed into that gridded time variant product that we sort of all want for our essential ocean variables? And part of the way that you go from on the right side, there's sort of a very detailed organogram, sort of data stream path. Won't go through all of it, but it starts in part with collecting data, creating requirements, and going out and collecting data, for example, with sediment sampling for small things and photography with larger animals. And in the middle there, you see these body mass size spectra. On the left side, that's sediment samples, and on the right side is data collected through photography. And you can see that parts of the size spectra align along a uniform line. And those size spectra slope are really part of what goes into that model I was talking about. And so it's a way that we can combine data from different methods and different places in a way that can be informing at a global scale. And so that's really the motivation for sharing this example. And so next slide. And so the next steps for us, a little bit where we've been, we've had GOOS community review and inputs and feedback. We've had a couple of expert workshops to get some more detailed feedback and have some little bit of debate about what we're finding and how we're thinking at the moment. That's going to lead to spec sheet revision. So we've got the spec sheets now. They need a little bit of revision, and then they'll get some independent review before being finalized, we expect. And then next year, the data spec sheet, sorry, the invert spec sheet is really only part of the whole story. So data schema examples, we've got one with marine. We think we need at least one more to help build out pictures of how different data types can come together and be formatted for onward use, including for more machine analysis that we all know is coming and building. And so, and lastly, some more detailed implementation plan drafting. So how do we put this together in a narrative where folks can go out and do more of this and contribute? And so last thing I'll say is just to reach out. There's the GOOS BioEco email, and you can reach out to any of us, I think, to give feedback or ask questions and find out how to help. Thank you. Over to Team Sea Turtle.
Thank you, Henry. So now we're going to listen to our Sea Turtle EOV leaders, Shalayla and Eduardo.
Thank you very much, Anna. So now Eduardo Cuevas and I are going to talk about sea turtles, our ecosystem ambassadors, and their importance as an essential ocean variable to monitor in GOOS. Next one, please. As you might know, we have 7 species of sea turtles in the world, much of which occur in all our oceans, with the exception of the flatback and the Kemp's Ridley that have more restricted distributions. And why they are so important in our oceans? Well, first of all, sea turtles, as all other species, are both predators and prey in our marine food webs. But they are also considered keystone species because they are crucial to the health of marine and coastal ecosystems. For example, the grazing of green turtles on seagrass beds and the foraging on jellyfish populations by leatherbacks maintain the balance in those biological communities. Sea turtles are also food for apex predators, not only in the ocean, like for sharks and killer whales, but also on land, like in the photo where you can see a jaguar feeding on a green turtle. Turtles facilitate carbon sequestration, which is currently very relevant due to the climate change scenario we are facing. Green turtles' frequent grazing on seagrass stimulates continuous growing of the seagrass, capturing carbon in the process. Another very important function of sea turtles is the way they connect marine ecosystems with coastal ecosystems and how they bring nutrients from the ocean to the land. This nutrient flow is principally done by laying eggs on sandy beaches, where eggs that do not develop or hatchlings that get predated are important food sources for coastal communities. Last but not least, sea turtles are charismatic species, which also makes them flagship species, given that they draw public attention and support for their conservation, and as a consequence, for the conservation of marine ecosystems in general. Next slide, please. Another important characteristic about sea turtles is their complex life cycle, which includes several different habitats, sometimes very distant one from another, at different life stages. These include neritic or coastal areas, as well as oceanic areas, and also nesting beaches. Some turtles, like loggerheads or leatherbacks, cross entire ocean bases many times during their life. To monitor the different movements processes, there are numerous methodologies that include passive tags, like flipper tags and PIDs, satellite tracking devices, genetic studies, and even stable isotope analysis, like the one in the map, where you can track where turtles were foraging before they migrated to nesting beaches, for example. This reality is important for two things. One is that during these long migrations, they face high risk from visiting multiple areas, countries, regions, and in this way, they are included in the BON Convention or CMS and in conventions that regulate international trade like CITES, among others as well. The next slide, please. The other thing is that these complex life cycles creates the need for local, regional, and even global collaboration, not only for their conservation, but also in order to conduct research that can answer important ecological questions. In these three figures, we can see how sea turtles show these movements. In the first one, at the local level, nesting females use different nesting areas in Yucatan Peninsula. In the second figure, these nesting females leave the nesting areas for foraging sites that are at different countries, as far as Barbados in this case. And in the third figure, we can see a network analysis based on movements of 6 species of sea turtles, where links represent connections and warmer colors represent higher values. And the results were used as a tool for identifying conservation priorities. Next one, please. Here we have another example showing how important it is to collaborate with scientific information at the global scale. This map shows satellite tracks of sea turtles worldwide, and in this integration of information, we can observe, for example, corridors in lighter colors, but also how much oceanic area needs to be managed properly to ensure that sea turtles' essential ecological process can continue. In the next slide, please. In this context, it is important to mention that indeed sea turtles are ocean ambassadors, given that cooperation and collaboration between researchers and conservationists has existed for many years and at different levels. And it is highly important to recognize and take into account all these efforts. Here we can see some of these examples, starting at the bottom, where we have 2 regional groups focused on single species, the one on the left on leatherbacks and the one on the right on hawksbill sea turtles, both in the Eastern Pacific. At the second level, we can see regional groups for all species combined, such as those in the Caribbean, Mediterranean, Latin America, Africa, Indian Ocean, and Southeast Asia. And on the third level, we certainly have the IUCN Marine Turtle Specialist Group, which coordinates the availability of information for population assessments, among many other topics. The next one, please. And in developing the contents of the Sea Turtle Essential Ocean Variable datasheet, a lot of consideration has been given to the information and integration of important global initiatives, such as the minimum data standards for sea turtle nesting beach monitoring from SWOT, which is the State of the World Sea Turtle Initiative, and the research management techniques for the conservation of sea turtles from the IUCN Marine Turtle Specialist Group, among many other information that we have. Now I give the floor to Eduardo.
Thank you, Shalila. Hi, next slide, please, Anna. So in this context and using all the explanation, the previous explanation by Rachel and Henry, and also by Anna, we also have this sea turtle EOV specification sheet that, as they said, it was also under consideration for a review, for an open review. there in that QR, you can follow that link to access the specification sheet, both in English and in Spanish too. So what we are in the process that we are doing now is also under the taking this document under review. As Shaleila commented, it is based on all these regional global efforts that have been the result, or they have come out with particular protocols after decades of dialogue and work. So acknowledging all those efforts by the sea turtle community and the initiatives and the institutions, we are taking into consideration for this first draft. The next slide, please, Anna. So it is pretty much the same. Well, not pretty much. It is the same structure of the other EOV specification sheet. So we wanted to share, in the case for sea turtles, we have these 4 subvariables that are those key variables that we are looking to measure, and we are proposing in this first draft as those features that we can measure, monitor, to assess the condition of sea turtles around the world. So we have nesting success, and you will notice that asterisk that it is considering it denotes as the bare minimum, one of the bare minimum subvariables that we are proposing, the number of individuals in foraging habitats, start, peak, and week of the nesting season, and number of stranding records. Those would be the 4 subvariables that are being proposed in this first draft. And then we have the supporting variables that, as Rachel commented, we have both, let's say, intrinsic variables and extrinsic or contextual variables. Here are some of the habitat variables, and we can see how the different EOVs can be assembled, and also the ECV, like precipitation and land temperature, because of the nesting habitats. So we can start figuring out how to assemble and how to work and analyze all this data, and some of the advantages of collaborating in this global initiative. Next, please, Anna. So we have these 3 phenomena that we are proposing to observe. They are population status and trends, distribution shift, and phenological changes. And as you can see, they are linked to the subvariables. Each of the phenomena has some of the subvariables, or all of them, like distribution shift. And we have this signal to capture that I mentioned, particularly this one, because of, in the case of the population status and trends, we have recently an example that shows how this monitoring could be working on, how it is linked to the global initiatives that are in place. Next one, Anna, please. So, for instance, in the case of population status and trends, in using the subvariable nesting success, we are considering 3 levels, like the ideal one, desirable, and minimum. And we are trying to propose variables, metrics that are accomplishable or feasible to implement in different levels around the world. So that's why we are working on these 3 levels. And we are following also some of the protocols and proposals that are out there, like Shaleila commented, this manual by SWOT, that they specify different protocols. So following that same rationale, we are building, or we are proposing this draft, this first draft, with these 3 different levels of, let's say, complexity of the subvariables that we would like to monitor around the world. Next, Anna, please. And I was commenting this signal that we would be looking for measuring to be monitored is the case, for instance, of the green turtles, Chelonia midas, that just in the recent red list assessment, it changed its status, and now it is considered of least concern. So we have been able, we as community have been able to reach those assessments based on these global efforts that Shaleila was commenting. And that's what we are looking for from the sea turtle EOV, acknowledging all these in place efforts and how we can contribute and strengthen all the regional and global efforts that are in place. And next, please, Anna. And just as another example, the number of individuals in foraging habitats, we are also considering both on nesting beaches, let's say the terrestrial habitats, one of the main terrestrial or the characteristic terrestrial habitat, and also in water. Next, please, Anna. This is just one example that how the long term of the different EOV, BioEco EOV, physical EOV as surface temperature, and essential climate variable can be assembled. And this is this is some of the questions that the sea turtle community usually is looking to respond. So this is an advantage or an opportunity under this framework that GOOS is promoting along with different allies, how the sea turtle community, we can work responding many of the questions that we have for management, conservation, and of course, for scientific research. Next, Anna, please, I think that's the last one. Yes, this EOV rationale looks to, as commented, to strengthen ongoing initiatives. We are aware and we are acknowledging previous and very strong efforts. We have this standardized opportunity, this standardized framework that Rachel and Anna just explained. So this is a framework that we could take advantage of and to work in the assemblage of the ecosystem variables. We have the opportunity of capacity building. That is a very important component of the global initiative that GOOS is associated with, like OBIS. And of course, this connectivity and authorship, as Henry was showing in one of his slides, this is a very good opportunity of collaborating in for instance, this OBIS portal, this OBIS initiative, and have a regional and global picture of the condition of the sea turtles, in this case, of sea turtles, and having the possibility of assembling with other different EOVs. That is the invitation. Please, the next one, Anna. As Henry and Rachel commented, well, here the allies and the initiatives. The next one, please, is the last one. If you have any comments, any suggestions, yes, also please reach out, let us know and your interest, and we can discuss and comment how all your suggestion and observations can be included in this review that we are doing for the specification sheet. Thank you, Anna, Shaleila.
Thank you very much, Eduardo. And to the audience, if you have any questions, please add them in the Q&A. So far, we don't have any yet. So, but I do have one in the meantime while people are thinking about their questions. And it's for all of you. I'd like you to tell us, what do you see as the major challenge? We've seen some of the challenges, for example, with benthic invertebrates and, that expand everywhere. but what do you see in your communities, in the benthic invertebrates, in the sea turtle communities, as the major challenge for coordination and the global effort? So I can start using my screen, maybe. Rachel.
Yeah, I can go first. I think what I'm going to say isn't specific to benthic inverts, but just speaking from an Australian context, there's often similar initiatives on national or regional scales for these standardization and best practice projects, particularly data standardization. And sometimes they're not necessarily talking or aware of each other. And so you end up almost with too many frameworks or too many guidelines for how to do things. And I think that almost makes people just revert to what they're familiar with because there's almost too much. So I think that's a bit of a challenge now, is that we've almost got too many efforts in this space, and it's trying to map those out so that everybody can be comfortable using what they're using and also promoting it. I know in Australia, Anna, GOOS, these GOOS BioEco spec sheets are not well known. And so there's probably some role for all of us on a national level to promote more internally. The EU and the US sometimes kind of think what they're doing is very global and broad, but in Asia and Australia, New Zealand, probably South America as well, it doesn't necessarily translate, and the word isn't necessarily getting out on that global level.
So a lot more awareness, of raising awareness and trying to connect all these different efforts so we can then move as one. So then Eduardo, and I have actually a question. So maybe I'll go first with a question that it's in the box. So are there any efforts in documenting and ultimately mitigating impacts to sea turtles? That's for you, Shalela and Eduardo. To sea turtle nesting sites and even benthic, oh no, it's for all of you, and even benthic invertebrates, especially caused by widespread infrastructure development, such as construction and seawalls and dikes. So any efforts on documenting this, infrastructure, widespread infrastructure development that are actually and mitigating to look at mitigating their impacts on sea turtles and benthic inverts.
Maybe I can start just with some information, Eduardo. Yes, they are, countries where sea turtle nesting occurs. Most of them have either nesting beaches or the most important nesting beaches protected, and others now, no, but in the past, of course, there has been a lot of loss of nesting beaches. There are areas in some countries where the coastal development completely lost entire nesting beaches, no, and this is well documented, no. What I see as challenge now for nesting beaches specifically is that with climate change, we are seeing changes in either in the distribution or also in the season of nesting beaches, no? And for example, I'm from Peru, and in Peru, we only have a little bit of nesting in the north, very close to the border with Ecuador. And we as a country are not prepared for managing and protecting nesting beaches for sea turtles. But we don't know if turtles are coming back and that in the past they do nested more, or it is that, maybe turtles are moving a little bit south due to climate change, no? And if that start happening for several species and in many coasts that are not prepared for this, then all this regulation to protect nesting beaches takes a lot of time to build, no? And I think so that's a challenge that we're seeing in this kind of communities now, no, with the climate change and how this is impacting this important part of their life cycle. No? Eduardo.
Thanks, Shalaila. How about benthic invertebrates, Henry or Rachel?
Yeah, so my impression is that this happens at a local to national level, so governmental level, during permitting and impact assessment exercises that are often mandated as part of an industrial activity. The challenge, I think, is that data and that information sits siloed in those units and very often does not make it out into the GOOS framework, or hardly ever into the GOOS framework, but hardly ever also probably out of the region itself. And so but that's the opportunity in a sense, is that there's lots of information that's being collected in relation to those industrial activities that can be part of GOOS. And it sort of in relation to your first question about barriers. And so one of them, of course, is for the benthic inverts is the challenge of there's 27 phyla, there's 10 orders of magnitude in size that are covered. There's all these different methods. And it is challenging to integrate that data into a sort of a unified variable, but it is possible and we have a way forward. And the tools are there. There's all kinds of tools for data management and so on, and other webinars and ways that people can discover how to do those integrations. And so I'm hopeful that it will get better. Yeah.
Yes, hopefully. So I guess at a GOOS level, we do have just a couple of essential ocean variables. One that is fully pressure, which is the marine debris, and one that can touch on some of the pressures, anthropogenic pressures, such as ocean sound. However, as Henry have mentioned, yes, there is information at a national level of all these, pressures, including infrastructure development, and that not only affects the turtles and benthic invertebrates, it actually affects a lot more ecosystems. Sometimes not even the need to touch that ecosystem. Say, think coral reefs and the riverine flow with all the pollutants that can basically reach these ecosystems and damage them, or you have mangroves as well being lost because of infrastructure development. It is that exists at a national level. The information is there. It's just a matter of trying to gather it and do a real global analysis to see how we can actually address these issues and mitigate their effects. But I can just think about what an effort can do, and the example that Eduardo and Shalaila gave on the green sea turtle. That took a lot of effort. It took a lot of years, but the population of these particular species has recover a little bit, I guess, to that it basically changed the status of that particular species. So, but it took global effort, and it took many people getting together and trying to address this issue, and this is what we're trying to do here with GOOS, with the EOV leaders in the program, is trying to gather this effort and coordinate better, so we can then address some of these challenges that we have. So any other question? No? Do you have any parting messages?
I have one question, Anna. When are the spec sheets due to be finalized? Like, when can people start to use those comfortably knowing they won't change?
Well, I think the specification sheets are kind of like a living document as technologies advance and we know a little bit more. So I won't particularly say they won't change, but when a more finalized version of the specification sheet will be available, it's probably the Q1 or Q2 of next year. So we have gone through consultation, community consultation. We have gone through expert input. Now it's a matter of looking at the expert input, put them all in shape. We need to also ensure that there is consistency across before we can actually put them out. But at the moment, there is version 2.0 available in the GOOS website, which you can see on your screen, goosocean.org. So, and people can download that version 2.0 and have a look. And I will encourage, all the people that are all our audience to go on and explore a little bit of what these specification sheets are. And then a more final version will be available next year. Well,
So,
with that, yeah.
Oh, just one more quick one. I guess the thing I often think about is who is GOOS, like who can be part of GOOS. And so I think it's always worth reminding that if you're collecting data for these kinds of things and you can do a bit of data management, you can very likely be part of GOOS. And in some cases, some people are already. And so the regional alliances of GOOS are all over the world, and they can help you. There's contacts throughout the world. And so feel free to reach out and learn more. Yeah.
Yes, the more the merry. Please reach out. We invite you to contribute to GOOS. I think this will only function if everyone actually is connected and contributes to the system, so we can have a truly coordinated and global integrated global ocean observing system. So, well, with that, I want to thank our panelists for these very interesting talks and the people that attended the webinar. Thank you. Hopefully this was an interesting webinar, and hopefully you'll get in touch. So thank you very much, everyone. And yeah, I'll let you all go.
Thanks for sharing, Anna.
Thank you.
Thank you.